It begins as a quiet hum beneath the noise of modern life, a feeling of nostalgia for a home you've never seen, a profound sense of weariness that has nothing to do with your years. Have you ever looked into the eyes of a child and felt you were seeing someone ancient? Or met a stranger and felt the undeniable shock of recognition, a silent hello again that your logical mind cannot explain? Modern psychology gives these feelings clinical names, glitches in the brain's filing system, tricks of memory. But what if that explanation is too small? What if these are not malfunctions but echoes? Echoes of experiences you have actually lived and knowledge you have already earned. This investigation does not ask you to believe. It asks you to consider the evidence. Evidence which suggests that for some of us, this is not our first journey, and that the deepest parts of who you are did not begin on the day you were born. If consciousness can carry memories across lifetimes, then who is the you that is watching this video right now? Our investigation begins not with one witness, but with a panel of three, separated by centuries, yet speaking with a single, unified voice. First, there is Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet. He was not a spiritual guru seeking followers. He was a simple photographer from Kentucky who, in a state of trance, could access a universal source of information. For 43 years, he produced over 14,000 documented readings, transcripts that gave medical advice, described lost history, and consistently, meticulously, laid out a map of the soul's long journey through time. He claimed this knowledge did not come from him, but through him. Then we turn to the bedrock of Western thought, Plato. Over 2 millennia ago, this brilliant Athenian philosopher argued that we are born possessing knowledge we could not have learned in this life. His concept of anamnesis proposed that all learning is, in fact, an act of remembering. For Plato, the soul was not a religious belief, it was a logical necessity, an immortal traveler temporarily bound to a physical form. And finally, we have Dr. Ian Stevenson, a modern man of science. He was not a mystic. He was the head of the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Virginia School of Medicine. For over 40 years, Dr. Stevenson traveled the globe, methodically investigating thousands of cases of young children who reported specific, verifiable memories of previous lives. He documented names, places, and events with a scientist's rigor, concluding that for some cases, reincarnation was the only rational explanation that fit all the facts. A sleeping prophet, a foundational philosopher, and a university psychiatrist. Three minds from radically different worlds who never met, yet all arrived at the same startling conclusion. Human consciousness is not a brief spark. It is a story, written over ages. Let us be clear, these three figures should not agree. They stand on opposite shores of human thought. Plato's tool was pure logic, the relentless pursuit of truth through reason alone in the sunlit squares of ancient Athens. Dr. Stevenson's world was one of peer-reviewed papers, clinical observation, and the cold, hard demand for empirical evidence. And Edgar Cayce's laboratory was a darkened room, his method a complete surrender of his conscious self to a force he could not explain. Cayce himself was a reluctant witness. A devout Christian, he was initially horrified when his own readings began to speak of reincarnation, a concept alien to his faith. He wasn't preaching a doctrine he had chosen. He was reporting on a reality that was being shown to him, a reality that challenged the very foundations of his personal beliefs. This inner conflict makes his testimony not weaker, but far more compelling. Dr. Stevenson faced a similar but external battle. He operated in a 20th century scientific paradigm that was openly hostile to any evidence suggesting the mind could exist outside the brain. He was not celebrated for his work. He was often ridiculed, yet he continued for decades, meticulously cross-referencing the statements of children with autopsy reports, death certificates, and the diaries of the deceased, building a mountain of data, so vast and so strange that it could not be easily dismissed. Each of them, in their own way, was creating a map of the unseen world, drawn from different vantage points. And yet, when you lay these maps on top of one another, the continents, the oceans, and the great rivers align with breathtaking precision. This convergence is not a footnote in our investigation, it is the headline. When these three maps are synthesized, the portrait of what we might call an old soul emerges with stunning clarity. It is not a personality type, it is a description of a consciousness carrying a vast, unseen library of experience. The first and most prominent characteristic is a form of knowledge that is not learned but remembered. Plato called it anamnesis. He argued that when we grasp a deep truth, whether in mathematics, morality, or art, we are not learning it for the first time. We are recognizing it. It's that sudden flash of insight, that feeling of, I have always known this. Old souls often exhibit this trait from childhood. They possess an innate wisdom, a quiet understanding of human nature that seems far beyond their years. They are the children who comfort their parents, the young people who see through social games with a weary patience. The second trait is a profound sense of detachment from the world's urgent dramas. While young souls, according to Casey, dive into the river of life eager for sensation, for wealth, status, and intense relationships, old souls often stand on the riverbank, not out of fear but out of familiarity. They have seen this river flow for centuries. In the East, the Vedanta philosophy explains this through the concept of samskaras. Imagine that every action, every thought, every lifetime leaves a subtle impression on the soul, like grooves on a stone. After countless journeys, the soul becomes heavy with these impressions. This creates not a cynicism, but a deep spiritual gravity. It's a weariness with superficiality, a hunger for conversations not about what people do but what they are. Finally, there is the feeling of a mission, a quiet but persistent pull toward a purpose they can't always name. Dr. Stevenson noted that many of the children he studied spoke of unfinished business from their past life. For an old soul, this translates into an adult life driven by an inner compass. They are often drawn to roles of healing, teaching, or art, not for acclaim, but because it feels like they are simply continuing a work started long ago. They feel they are here to mend something, to balance an ancient equation. This isn't a life of grand pronouncements. It's a life lived in a different key, a quieter melody playing under the noise of the world, a melody that only those with similar memories can truly hear. Imagine your soul not as a blank slate at birth, but as an infinite library. Most of the books are unread in this lifetime. The lights are off in most of the corridors, but you live with the constant humming presence of all that silent knowledge. This is why an old soul's intuition feels less like a guess and more like a memory surfacing. It is the quiet recognition of a pattern seen 1,000 times before. It's the reason they can sit through a heated argument and see not the anger, but the childhood wound beneath it. They are not judging. They are reading a familiar chapter from the great book of human struggle. This inner library is also why they are often terrible liars, especially to themselves. The truth has a weight, a resonance, that feels physically different from a lie. This library also explains their strange immunity to the fevers of the world. The desperate pursuit of fame feels hollow when you have a subconscious memory of being both a king and a beggar. The sting of betrayal is less sharp when your soul remembers forgiving that same wound in a different body, in a different age. This is not apathy. It is the quiet peace of a traveler who has already walked this road and knows that all storms eventually pass. They seek joy, not in the fleeting peaks of excitement, but in the enduring landscape of peace. This accumulated knowledge, this deep-seated peace, is not a retirement plan for the soul. It is its toolkit. It is the foundation upon which its true mission is built, a mission that often involves the most difficult work of all. This brings us to a terrifying and beautiful paradox. If an old soul possesses such wisdom, why isn't their life easier? Why are they so often drawn to hardship, loss, and profound loneliness? The answer, our sources suggest, changes everything we thought we knew about suffering. The old soul does not choose a difficult life as a punishment, but as a final exam. It is a curriculum designed by the soul, for the soul, before it ever enters a body. Casey's readings are emphatic on this point. We are not victims of circumstance. We are co-authors of our destiny. Imagine the soul as a master artisan and life as a block of marble. A young soul might be content to simply chip away at the edges, learning the basic tools of free will and consequence. But an old soul, having mastered the basics over countless apprenticeships, returns for one final masterpiece, to carve away the last, most difficult vestiges of the ego. This requires facing the most challenging human experiences head-on, not to endure them, but to transcend them. This is why you often find old souls in the center of life's storms. They are learning forgiveness in the face of betrayal. They are learning compassion by caring for the sick. They are learning unconditional love in families that are broken. Each challenge is a carefully chosen opportunity to resolve an ancient karmic knot, to close a loop that has been running for lifetimes. This single idea re-enchants the universe. It means that the most painful moments of your life are not random acts of a cruel cosmos. They are sacred appointments. If this is true, then your greatest wound may also be your greatest spiritual opportunity. The person who hurt you most might be the teacher you unknowingly asked for, and the feeling of being a stranger in this world is not a sign that you are lost, but a sign that you are remembering that this world is not your final destination. It is simply the school you chose to attend. This reframes the very purpose of existence. We are not here to be comfortable. We are here to become conscious. We are not here to accumulate. We are here to awaken. The pains and sorrows that modern culture teaches us to avoid at all costs are, from this perspective, the very curriculum we have enrolled in. The Vedanta tradition calls this the burning of karma. It is the understanding that every action, good or bad, creates an energy that must eventually return to its source. A young soul is still busy creating karma, driven by impulse and desire. An old soul, however, has shifted its focus. Its primary work is no longer creating but resolving. It is a cosmic accountant settling ancient debts, not with money, but with wisdom. This is why old souls often feel a strange sense of responsibility for the suffering of others. It is not a savior complex in the psychological sense. It is the deep cellular memory of having been both the oppressor and the oppressed, the victim and the perpetrator, across the great wheel of time. They see conflict not as a battle between us and them, but as a tragic play in which their own soul has played every single role. This perspective makes judgment impossible and compassion inevitable. So if you have ever looked at your life and asked, why me? Why is it so hard? The answer, echoing from these traditions, is as simple as it is shattering. Because you were strong enough to choose it. You did not come here for an easy passage. You came here for graduation. If this life is a school and karma is the curriculum, what is the graduation? What is the final destination for a soul that has learned all its lessons? Here, our investigators, for all their wisdom, fall silent. Their language, which so brilliantly described the journey, collapses when it tries to contain the destination. Plato, in his famous Myth of Air, describes the soul's journey after death. He speaks of judgment, of learning, of choosing the next life. But when he speaks of the ultimate cosmic truths revealed in that state, he describes them as a vision of pure, interlocking light, a divine spindle of cosmic harmony that is beautiful, but ultimately beyond human description. He can show us the journey, but not the final arrival. Edgar Cayce's readings speak of the soul eventually merging back with its source, which he called God. But when asked to describe this union, the transcripts often contain phrases like a long pause, or descriptions of a state of being so total, so complete, that it is incomprehensible to a mind bound by individuality. He said we would lose nothing, but become everything. A poetic, powerful, yet profoundly elusive concept. Even the rigorous scientific literature on near-death experiences, which documents the life review, encounters this same barrier. Patients of Dr. Raymond Moody and Dr. Bruce Grayson describe being in the presence of a being of light, a consciousness of infinite love and knowledge. They report being shown the interconnectedness of all things, but when they try to put the core of that knowledge into words, they consistently say the same thing: I can't. It's too big for language. This is the great sacred mystery at the heart of the journey. The final purpose of the soul is not a piece of information to be learned. It may be a state of being to be experienced, a reality so vast that our human consciousness can only glimpse its shadow. The ultimate truth, it seems, cannot be spoken. It can only be returned to. This boundary of language is not a failure of the witnesses. It is a fundamental feature of the reality they are trying to describe. Our entire world of words is built on separation. We have a word for me and a word for you, a word for past and a word for future, a word for life and a word for death. The reality being hinted at is one of complete, seamless unity, where all these distinctions dissolve. It is like trying to describe the ocean to someone who has only ever known a single drop of water. You can say the ocean is big or wet, but these words are laughably inadequate. You cannot convey the feeling of its infinite power, its tidal rhythms, or the way it contains both life and terrifying emptiness. To know the ocean, you must become one with it. The great sages of the East built their entire philosophies around this very problem. In the Advaita Vedanta, the ultimate reality, Brahman, is described as neti neti, not this, not that. The only way to speak of it truthfully is to say what it is not, because any positive description would limit the limitless. The final state of liberation, moksha, is not about going to a place called heaven. It is the complete and final dissolution of the illusion of the separate self. It is not an acquisition of something new, but the realization of the unity that was always there. So when the NDE survivor falls silent, or when Plato speaks in metaphors, or when Casey's trance deepens into an unrecordable stillness, they are not failing us. They are giving us the most accurate report possible. They are showing us the edge of our own conceptual universe and pointing into the silent, luminous, and terrifyingly beautiful void that lies beyond. If this vast ancient story of the soul is being told by so many credible sources, why is it not the headline of our civilization? Why does our culture seem so resistant, even hostile, to this entire body of evidence? The answer is that this knowledge does not just add a new fact to our worldview. It shatters the very foundation of the modern paradigm. We live in a world built on materialism, the belief that matter is the only reality, and that consciousness is simply a byproduct of brain chemistry. From this perspective, the brain is a biological computer that produces the illusion of a self. When the computer breaks, the self is extinguished. End of story. This is not a scientific fact. It is a philosophical assumption that has hardened into a cultural dogma. Within this paradigm, the experiences of an old soul are not evidence. They are symptoms. A feeling of detachment is labeled as depression. Innate wisdom is dismissed as coincidence. A deep spiritual longing is diagnosed as anxiety. The paradigm doesn't have the tools to even properly categorize this data, so it pathologizes it. It tells the old soul, "You are not wise, you are broken." The research of Dr. Ian Stevenson is a perfect case study. For decades, his meticulous work was largely ignored by mainstream psychology. His thousands of cases, any one of which should have sparked a revolution in consciousness studies, were dismissed as anecdotal or explained away with flimsy, contorted theories. Why? Because to accept his conclusions would mean accepting that the brain is not the creator of consciousness, but perhaps a receiver, a radio tuning into a signal that existed long before the radio was ever built. This idea is not just a scientific heresy. It is a threat to the entire economic and social structure built on materialism. If we are not our bodies, then what is the ultimate value of material accumulation? If our consciousness is eternal, how does that change our frantic fear of death? Resisting this evidence is not a failure of intelligence. It is an act of self-preservation for a paradigm that knows, on some level, that this single truth would change everything. This resistance is not just philosophical, it is deeply psychological. The materialist worldview, for all its limitations, offers a strange, cold comfort, the promise of a final end, a release from all responsibility, all pain, all memory. Oblivion can sound like peace to a weary mind. The idea of an immortal soul bound by the laws of karma and reincarnation is, in contrast, a doctrine of infinite responsibility. It suggests that our actions echo through eternity, that we cannot escape our own consciousness. This is a terrifying prospect for an ego that wishes to believe its choices have no ultimate consequence. Furthermore, our entire consumer culture is an engine that runs on a single fuel, the belief that you are not enough and that your fulfillment lies in the next purchase, the next experience, the next external validation. An eternal soul with a sense of inner purpose is the ghost in that machine. It is the ultimate non-consumer. It seeks meaning, not novelty. It seeks peace, not distraction. The materialist paradigm, therefore, is not a lie. It is a map of a single, flat continent on a vast spherical world. It is useful for navigating that one continent, but it denies the existence of the oceans, of other lands, of the stars themselves. The evidence for the soul is not an argument against the map. It is the discovery of the globe. Therefore, the dismissal of this evidence is a form of cultural gaslighting. It is a system telling an individual that their deepest, most authentic perceptions of reality are a delusion. It forces the old soul into a painful choice. Either believe the consensus and declare war on your own inner truth, or trust your soul and accept a life of quiet exile from the mainstream. You have now seen the connections. You have heard the echoes from the philosopher's garden, the scientist's laboratory, and the prophet's trance. The quiet hum of nostalgia, the inexplicable wisdom, the deep weariness. You now have a map that suggests these are not glitches. They are signals, signals from the oldest part of you. You cannot unhear this signal now. The only choice is how you will respond. To dismiss it is to return to the comfort of the small map, but to listen to it is to begin the great work of remembering who you really are. This channel is not a place for answers. It is a gathering place for investigators, a community of remembrance for those who feel they are waking from a long dream. If this journey expanded your sense of what is possible, leave a like not for the algorithm, but as a sign to the silent network of souls like you. I am remembering too. Subscribe if you are ready to investigate the next piece of the puzzle. The great exploration has only just begun. If this investigation resonates with the questions you've been asking, subscribe to continue the great exploration. This concludes our inquiry for now, a synthesis of documented human testimony and timeless philosophical questions, grounded in the sources that guide our journey. What echo did this story awaken in you?